Welcome, my friends, to a new episode of Frameworks. And in this episode, we're going to talk about mixed frameworks. Now, someone might say, Shadi, what do you mean by mixed frameworks? And the answer is simply, we have so many frameworks in English language, and usually when we train teachers in courses like CELTA, CERT, TESOL, TEFL, you name it, we actually ask them to deliver, most of the time this is what happens, we ask them to deliver 45-minute lessons. And again, in a 45-minute lesson, it's only enough for you to follow one framework, because that's not a lot of time. But in reality, some people deliver 2-hour English lessons. Some people deliver 3-hour English lessons with some breaks in there. Now, in these scenarios, you can put two frameworks and mix them together. And this is what so many course book writers do. And the reason why they do that is because it's less work, So instead of, for example, using one passage for text-based presentation and another passage for reading, so why don't we use the same passage for both, for teaching reading and for text-based presentation? That kind of thinking. And also because time would be enough to finish all that in reality. So in this episode, we're going to focus on two frameworks put together to create one lesson. We're going to talk about the receptive skills framework plus the text-based presentation framework. And you're going to see examples from a live lesson as well. So let's go. So first, it's very important to see the two separate frameworks first. And then we look at how they're going to be put together, right? So let's have a look at the receptive skills framework. And we've got here the pre-reading or listening block, and it has stages like leading, context setting, pre-teaching vocabulary, which is an optional stage, prediction, which is also another optional stage. And then we have the second block, while reading, listening. And then we have reading or listening 1, reading and listening 2. And these two stages are about different reading or listening sub-skills. And then we have the third block, which is post-reading or listening. And we have 3 options here. We can choose one of them. Writing, speaking, or text analysis. So this is what we call the receptive skills framework. And let's go to the text-based framework. And in the text-based framework, we have leading as a first stage, then we have exposure. And exposure is kind of a reading or listening activity. And then we have highlighting, and then after that we have language clarification, then practice, and finally feedback. Lovely. Now, if you notice, you will see that we've got leading in the receptive skills framework and leading in the text-based framework. Now, what does that mean? It means that we will only need one stage. So we don't need to have lead and repeated. That's what we mean by mixing two frameworks together. So then as long as we're going to start with the receptive skills part, then the lead-in will disappear from the TPP framework or the text-based presentation. But not only that, think about this. We have a while reading stage. And in the while reading stage, people will read the text twice, focusing on different reading sub-skills. And as you see also, we have the exposure stage, which is a kind of reading, also listening. So why do we need this stage if the students are going to read the text twice? So we can also remove this one from text-based presentation. You see what I mean? So the leading can be dropped, and also the exposure can be dropped. Because in the exposure stage, what we want from our students is to be exposed to the target language. Well, they have already been exposed to the target language when they read the text twice. So there is no need for this stage right now. So the final outcome, the final framework would look as follows. Let's see. So it will start with a normal leading. And we know that leading is for generating students' interest in the text, whether this text is listening or reading. And I'm saying text because I'm talking here about a lesson that starts with the receptive skills framework and end in the TPP framework. Then, after that, we've got context setting. So leading is more about the general topic. Context setting is more related to the text itself. And I gave so many examples about this before. So my leading can be about extreme sports in general, but my context setting would focus on bungee jumping. Right, so after context setting, we have pre-teaching vocabulary, which is a stage that we run in order to make sure that the students are not facing difficulties with blocking words, and they can read the text and understand it. And as I said, it's an optional stage, so it doesn't have to be there. It's up to the teacher, right? And then we have the prediction stage, and we said also that's an optional one. And usually in the prediction stage, you will ask students questions before they read or listen so that they can predict the answer. And then they either listen or read to check their prediction. So this is usually a prediction stage. And what follows a prediction stage is usually reading or listening for checking the prediction part. Now, then we move to the first reading or the first listening. And most of the time, this is a kind of a scanning task or a skimming task. I'm not saying all the time, but most of the time it is like that. And then we follow it with also reading and listening to, which can be any other sub-skill that needs to be focused on. Right, then we get to the last part in the receptive skills framework, which is writing or speaking or text analysis. Then you move from there and you go to highlighting. And highlighting is about asking students to highlight the target language in the text through asking them a question that would encourage their noticing skills so that they can notice how grammar works in this text. And after highlighting, we normally go to the language clarification stage. And then after the language clarification stage, we move to the practice stage. And the practice stage is about controlled practice and freer practice. Then we follow this, my friend, with feedback. So as you see, this is kind of two frameworks becoming one framework. And let me show you the course book I'm going to use in today's episode of Frameworks. And it's a lovely book. I love it myself, and I really recommend it for self-taught tutors to use it for the teaching practice points. And I also find it also amazing for normal English language classes. I love it. And it's called Straightforward by Macmillan Publishing House. Wonderful piece of work by Philip Kerr and Siri Jones. I also had the honor of meeting one of this course book writers. In 2017, I met Philip Kerr. I was delivering an input session at an international symposium in Brno in Czech Republic. And as I still remember, he was a member in the panel there. I had the honor of having a breakfast and a chit-chat with a wonderful man, listening to some of his wonderful ideas as well. So, here we are talking about Philip Kerr's and Siri Jones' course book, straightforward, in today's episode of Frameworks. So let's see. And my friends, leading, and again, as I said, leading is to attract students' attention in the topic of the lesson. And it's very important to start your receptive skills lesson with a leading. So let's see how I did this with my students. Let's go. Right, welcome my friend. So let's continue what we started last time. So as you remember, last time we talked about wildlife, right? We talked about wildlife and we talked about adjectives related to animals, right? So let me ask you this question. If you were to have an animal as a pet at home, what would you choose and why? If you were to choose an animal as a pet, what would you choose and why? Yes? Oh, a turtle. Why? Okay, can you raise your voice for your friends in the back? Okay, you want to be a slow person at home, or you want to be patient? Yeah, well, why not? Yeah. A bit dangerous if you're going to someone asks you for a cup of tea and right, okay. Yeah? Yes?
I would also prefer her to have a turtle. Not because to learn me more patience or teach me more patience, but because there is no more noise like other dogs. You have to be her and at the same time you have to be after this one and still they jump everywhere around you. I think the turtle doesn't make so much noise like them.
Okay, interesting. And so you want kind of a silent pet?
Yes.
Okay, so people here, yes?
I'm going to choose a monkey.
Oh,
Yeah.
seriously?
Yeah, that's nice and look.
Let me listen to the lady. Why?
Because it looks like us, but it don't have mind, so I can be similar to us.
What? What are you trying to say? Like that monkeys are similar to humans?
Yes, but they don't have mind. So.
But do you think that monkeys don't have mind? Some people say they're very smart.
Yes, that's very smart, but don't have mind.
Okay, wonderful. Other idea, one last idea here. What kind of pet? Yes? Repeat again.
Yes. Well, birds, because they're loyal, they're honest, and if there's a dangerous thing will happen, they will alert you about this.
Well, dogs are amazing as pets, right?
Yes.
Now, time for the context setting. And again, we said that in the context setting stage, we try to focus more on the topic of the passage or the listening text. And again, for that purpose, I used the idea in the course book. So as you see, work in pairs and discuss this question. What adjectives would you use to describe the birds in the photos? So that was the idea in the course book, and let's see how I did that. Let's go. Well, I agree with you. Right, so I guess it's very easy to imagine what we're going to talk about again, but this time we're going to get to a reading passage where we're going to read again about wildlife and animals and all that stuff. So, keep your books closed. Don't open your books now. I want you to look at this, my friends. So, here is the passage. What I want you to do, my friends, is discuss with your partners what adjectives would you use to describe the birds in the photos. And look at this. We have 3 photos. 1, 2, and 3. So it's just a discussion about adjectives related to these birds. So are you going to read anything? No. No reading. It's just speaking. And you will talk about what exactly? Adjectives about these three verbs. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy? Let's go. Now, my friends, after the context sitting, it was the time for reading one. And this is the question at straightforward, read the article and complete the table, right? So let's see how I ran reading one. Let's go. So you see this chart here. All I want you to do is read the passage and complete this chart. Okay, so read and complete. Go on. Start. Now, my friends, right, I want you to check with your partner. Help each other. Together, here. Both of you. Okay, my friends, answer key. So I want you to look and check your answers. Right, go on. Do you want to ask me any questions about this chart?
What's the meaning of deforestation?
Huh?
What is the meaning of deforestation?
Deforestation. Deforestation is the burning of trees or the cutting of trees. So when trees are cut down or burned down. Then we come to reading two, and the question here is about find a word in the article that means, which is kind of guessing words from the context. That's the focus here. So let's see me delivering this part. Now, let me take you to another question. And close your books. Close your books, close your books, close your books. Again, so it is the same what? It's the same passage one more time. But this time, my friends, we're going to handle question number 3. And in question number 3, we have a definition. And we're supposed to find the right word for that definition from the text, right? So you need to use your guessing. So try to guess, oh yes, this word can go with this definition. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy? So, what are you going to write in front of each definition? Kind of one? Okay, good. Go on. Now, my friends, with your partner, help each other. Go on.
Yes, maybe. Okay, righty then. So, what about the first one? How do you say it? Iridescent. Iridescent. Yeah. Iridescent. Right. Okay, what about the second one?
Stunning.
Very good. But it's exactly here for stunning, yeah, it's to the point. Right, 3, habitat. Right. Now, what about 4? Login. What about 5? Predators. So, any questions about these?
Why do we say logging instead of deforestation?
Yes. Why do?
Did we say logging instead of deforestation?
Yeah, that maybe log has 2 meanings. Number 1, I'll tell you. Number 1, which is the famous one, is verb to enter. But log is something that we use even here in Egypt with beds. You know these pieces of wood that we have under the bed? What do we call them? We call them logs. Okay? So the reason why logging here is used and not deforestation is deforestation can be burning and it can be cutting. One of them. But only logging is about cutting trees and turning them into... Yes. Okay. That's why it's very confusing. Okay, so yeah, the log here can be a piece of wood. It can be used as a noun and it can be used also as a verb. So again, so one more time. So now, deforestation is about 2 actions. Either you cut the trees down or you burn them down. But logging is only one action, which is cutting the trees and turning them into
Pieces.
logs and then selling them all. Like what we have here in Dumia. Like all the wood or the pieces, we call these logs. You see them when you're traveling to New Damietta. You see these big, storehouses, right, with logs.
Now time comes for the speaking part. And again, I use the idea given in the course book, which is work in pairs, discuss these questions. So it's a discussion question. Let's see how I did it.
Activity number 4 here. And we have 3 questions. First, I want you to read the questions. If there is a difficult word, please ask before you have time to think on your own. So check the questions first. No difficult words? Okay, so now, think and try to take notes before you start talking with your friends. Take your time. Think about your answers to these questions in your mind. Everybody, ladies in the back, how are you? Okay, now. So we're going to work in big groups, every 4 together, right? And what I want you to do, my friends, I want you to change your opinions. As we said before, it's very important to do what? Follow up? Based on what your friend might say. Okay, and then you build the conversation this way. So let's have a time for circle here, the 4 of you together. Both of you, please move your seats. And here, both of you, move your seats here.
لا for some people takes time some people to say this.
I would like you to tell me some of the interesting ideas you heard from your friends. Yes?
We talk about the birds that really useful task for farmers, like understand. Yes, it was useful. Yes, to help the farmer to hunt or get out these worms and also the rats. And these days you can find them in the farm. You can find them around the bird. So as we said, they try to make the swan outside the farms according to the chemical things that they put inside the farm and so on.
Yeah. Sad. Oh, okay. That's very sad. Yeah. Interesting. What else? Other ideas? Yes?
I think we all agree about hunting birds, but we have heard our friend spoke about hunting snakes for their skins.
Ah, okay. And does he think that this is good or bad?
I think it's good for trade. The skin of the snakes have a good price.
Yeah, it's very expensive, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the poison also, they get the poison out. Yeah, the venom, yeah. What else? What about people in the back?
Yeah, we have some friends here, like eating the small bird like the sparrows.
The sparrows?
Yes.
They eat it?
Yes, same. It's a surprise for us.
Okay, well the sparrows are those very, very small birds, you know, we have them here in Egypt in trees everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
You will be a picture.
Let's
They put on you see, they roast it and
Is it even, I don't know how people do this. I mean, those beautiful, innocent birds. Have you done it? Me too, right, yeah. And the gentleman in the back.
Now, after the reading part was over, I didn't start again with leading. Why? Because I did it. I didn't use the exposure stage in the TPP framework. Why? Because the students read twice. I jumped directly to highlighting. Let's see how I did that with my students. Let's go.
Okay, now my friends, we've read this text. We've read this text how many times? Twice, right? Now, what I want you to do is to read it for the third time. But this time, what I want you to find is present habits. So whenever you see a present habit in the text, I want you to underline it. So underline every present habit in the text. Is it easier and squeezy? It doesn't have to be only present simple. Any sentence that would express a present habit, underline it. Okay? Go on. Okay, now, compare with your partners. How many sentences have you found? Go on. Okay. Right, my friend. Right now, I would like to listen to some of the sentences you underlined. Anyone? Yes?
Britain has problems flying and will jump backwards in order to take off.
Take off. I need another one. Yeah, let me listen to the lady in the back, yes?
Forces of the Central America where it plays are constantly reducing the classes number in the region.
Numbers are constantly reducing the Bristol's number. Okay, yes?
Please, Dr. Shadi, I will ask about number one.
Yeah.
Why we choose will future?
Well, look, for now, I'm just writing the present habits, but don't worry about that. I will answer your question in the coming part. Okay? Right. Yes? He. Cutting it back.
Now, after the highlighting stage, it was the language clarification stage. And let's see how I did this. Let's go.
So, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Loads of books. So now, my friends, we have here 4 examples. I'm not saying that this is everything. You have a lot of examples in the passage. Just these 4 are fine here. So we've got it feeds at night. And when you say that it feeds about the bird, that the kiwi feeds at night, okay? So we're talking about what? We're talking about a habit, right? So that's a kind of a habit. Wonderful. Okay. Now, when we say that Weston will jump backwards in order to take off, this is also a what?
Future.
It's a habit, but it's what we call a predictable behavior. And a predictable behavior means, okay, it is something that will predict that the animal will normally do. Like, for example, listen to this one, okay? My neighbor has a dog, okay? And this dog comes to our building, okay, or comes to our house from a time to another, okay? But this dog is really violent and, you know, aggressive.
Yeah.
So this dog will attack
Yeah.
any cat on the street. So when I say the dog will attack any cat on the street, am I talking about a habit?
Yes.
Is it in the future?
No.
It is.
Yes.
In the future. So it is kind of prediction here, right? So for the first one, I will write what? Habit. But for this one, I will write
Prediction.
predictable behavior. Yes.
Can you use these?
Oh yeah. Right. Now let's come to this one. Hunters are constantly reducing their crystals numbers. This is, you know, hunters are constantly reducing crystals numbers.
Continuous.
Now,
Continuous.
it is also a habit, but how is it different from the other two habits?
Continuous
Continuous
habits.
happens.
Any habit is, of course, continuous. Come on, for God's sake. Give me something new. Let me give you this example. Remember the story of the dog. Wait a minute. Look. So I said that my neighbor has a dog, right? Right. And this dog sometimes comes to our house, and this dog will attack any cat on the street. And what I really hate is that this dog is always barking. Excellent. So it is a habit, but it is annoying. So the first one is a normal habit. The second one is a predictable. But this one is a what? Annoying habit.
It's only annoying habit.
So that's why when you say this, hunters are constantly reducing their crystals numbers. It means that hunters are killing the bird, which is something, of course, annoying. Okay? So, for example, the lady in the back was really unhappy with the fact that me and some of the friends, you know, in the back were eating those carrots. So she was saying, and they are constantly eating these innocent sparrows. So, lovely. Last one. Farmers keep cutting back to make cornfields. Now, well, let's say something. No, the habit is usually continuous. So yeah, but in relation to the others, how is it different when you say, I keep cutting back to make cornfields?
Bad habits.
Useful habit.
So I would say also, it's a habit that we don't like, but I would say annoying habit.
Annoying means they don't like, right?
But I would add most of the time.
Most of the time.
Which means that you can use it for good habits as well, but most of the time it is used with annoying habits.
But I can use it for non-annoying.
Yeah, you can use it for normal habits, but what most native speakers do is that we use it for
Annoying habit.
yeah.
So look, what's the difference between the last one and the
Yeah,
previous
so
one?
let's come to this. So the first one is a normal
Habits.
This one is a predictable behavior. These two are annoying.
Annoying habit.
But this one is all the time.
Only annoying habit.
But this one
All the time. Most of the
most
time.
of the time, not all the time.
According to some people's opinion, they can constrain annoying others to
You can't say it's mere usage. There is no specific reason why. It depends. It's just a matter of choice.
Yes.
But native speakers, most of the time they use it for a habit that is annoying. Okay? Right. So again, now my friends, let's shift the focus now from meaning and let's talk about structure. Right? So let's look at the first one. What is the tense used here?
Present simple.
Yeah, that is obvious. And we don't need. Okay, I'll use the other color. So that's present
Present simple.
simple. And then if the question will jump backwards in order to
Future.
take off.
Future.
What is that?
Future.
Oh yeah, that's the future form. So the first one is present,
Simple.
and the second one is
Future simple.
future simple, right? And of course we studied the structure
When.
thousands of times, right? So, right, let's come
Present continuous. Present continuous.
present continuous. But let me say something. In order to use the present continuous for annoying habits, then you will need to use constantly, or sometimes you can use always. Yes.
What
Those
does the meaning?
adverbs.
What does the meaning?
Using
Constantly, all the time.
Always?
All the time. Forever, all the time. Yeah. So
Sometimes.
adverbs of frequency that will show you are annoyed. It's like when you say, my son is always talking on the phone. So using present continuous with the adverb always means yes, like you're annoyed. Okay, you're unhappy about it. Right. Then we come to this last one, and then we have here, okay, what? The verb key and plus verb plus ing. Right? Easy lemon squeezy. So again, so number one, that's present.
Present simple.
Then we have future, simple, and then we have present.
Continuous.
And finally down there, we've got, yeah, of course that's present simple, but it's got verb plus ing. Right? It is used for annoying habits most of the time, not all the time. Like if you see someone using it for a normal habit, okay. It's like when I say,
Please, Dr. Shadi, the last example, present simple.
it is, yes, keep is in the present simple. Okay? But keep as a verb needs to be followed by
ING.
so that's the point. Okay. So my friends, you can say something like,
Dr. Shadi.
my cat keeps destroying everything in the kitchen. It's because it's something annoying, so I can use also keep it. Yes, your question?
Yes, we for the last one we use the verb keep.
Yes.
All the time.
Yeah. So keep here is
It's a condition to
keep
use it.
plus verb plus ing. So now again, so how many ways do we have of expressing present habits? Four, right? First one, normal habit. Second one, predictable. And this is not only with animals, it can be also used with humans. Like I can say, talk to your manager, he will get angry.
Yeah.
Right? We say that in Arabic, even in our mother tongue, right? We say, كلمه وشوف هيعمل. I think it's normal. Right, good. So, now listen carefully, close your books. I want you to listen to my intonation, and I want you to copy it. Easy peasy? My dog is always barking. My dog is always barking.
dog is always barking.
My dog is always barking.
My dog is always barking.
This parrot is constantly making noise.
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 These cats keep coming here.
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 Okay, so with the last two structures, your voice needs to show that you're annoyed, you're unhappy, because that's also part of the way you deliver the message. Like you can't say, for example, my dog is always barking.
It's normal.
I'm not annoyed.
Yeah, the grammar is correct, but people will not get your message this way. That's what happened. My dog is always barking. So that's how. My dog is always barking. So repeat that part. My dog is always barking.
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 This kind of, okay. Yeah, right. Lovely. So open up your words.
Now practice time. And as I said, controlled practice and freer practice. And I started by doing this activity with my students. Tick the sentences 1 to 5 which describe a habit. And then I followed that with the second activity. Rewrite the sentences using the words in brackets. 2 controlled practice activities here. And then I used the third activity from the course book, which is write the names of 3 people who annoy you in some way. They can be people you know personally or famous people, and then work in pairs. So that's a kind of a freer practice.
Now, and my friends, here we are. I have here sentences 1 to 5. And what I want you to do is to tick the sentences that express habits. So from 1 down to 5, which sentences describe habits? Go on. Work on. What about number 1? Not a habit.
Yeah.
Think of it. Is it going to repeat? Obviously no. It's a normal prediction.
Yes.
But it's not a predictable behavior.
Yes.
Because what is the difference?
Disappear or not?
Okay. Yeah. A predictable behavior will happen over and over and over again. It's like, it's like a wife and a husband. The wife knows how her husband would react to anything, right? So she knows if she does this, he will get angry. So this is a kind of what? Predictable behavior. And it happens when you understand someone or something very well. That's when you can actually produce such comments. And you say, oh, she will do this now. It's going to be predictable behavior. I know that this is her habit. So she will do it this way. Right. That's why number 1 is no. Now number 2, can you read it for me?
That we will not to scale
Yes. Now my friends, what I want you to do, we have sentences here in activity 2, 1 down to 6. And what I want you to do is to rewrite these sentences using one of the words in the word in brackets. Right? So the first one, for example, we have conservationists look for ways of saving endangered species all the time. Now you want to use what? Which word? Constantly. So how will you do it? I want to listen to yes? No, let me listen to Fred here, yes? Excellent answer. Say it again, raise your voice, good friends. عامل الأبن دول أنا سمعت.
النهارده أغلب الغرب خضراء في الطرق.
Yeah, so again, repeated conservationists are constantly looking for ways, which means that this is an annoying habit now. If you do it. So again, rewrite everything. Go on. Now, with your partners, compare your answers, help each other. Go on.
Number
Write it then. Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. So, what about number 2? Yes, Habib?
Yes. Rich collectors will pay high prices for rare birds.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So, rich collectors will pay. Now, what about number 3? Who's for yes? No.
We can see.
There are victims in the back.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I would say, yes, excellent answer. Customs officers keep continually finding large numbers of illegally killed birds. Now, my friends, let's get ready for a conversation. And all I want you to do now is to write 3 names for people you know, but they have habits you don't like. So 3 names for people you know, and they have habits that you don't like. And of course, we said that there are 2 structures to be used with habits we don't like. What's the first one? Yeah, the present continuous with always, constantly, or forever. And the second
Annoying habits.
E plus the plus I.
Yes.
Okay, good. So first, take your time, write the 3 names. Only the names. Let's change the buttons. And this will change everything. So both of you together. Now, both of you. You will say to your friend something like, Samir, my brother, is always playing the radio very loud. And then you ask, okay, and you know, and what do you do about it? You know, have you ever talked to him about this? And then the conversation goes on. So I expect follow-up questions, right? So every one of you will speak about how many characters? 3. Which means 6 all in all, right? Go on, start. So, what are the interesting pieces of information you've heard from your friends? Yes?
For me, he was talking about Top Nazar for them, Muhammad and Isaac.
Right, yeah.
So, he talked to me about Muhammad when he lost the PUBG game and he cried.
Oh, yes.
Right about and Isaac is hating animals.
And hate animals. Yes.
Isaac.
Yes, he's the animal
I
man.
told him the second lesson it will be about animal rights.
Yes, he's right about this. Muhammad keeps shouting while I'm playing PUBG, giving everybody a headache. Okay, what else? Yeah? So only she starts, but she doesn't finish the drum. Okay. Well, that's not really right. What else? Say. Yeah?
Yeah, my partner talked about person is always acting out. He keeps playing with his toys and he makes her house a mess all the time.
Okay.
And
Disturbing neighbors and making problems everywhere. Okay. Does he eat on bed?
what?
Does he eat on bed?
Yes.
Okay, well that's kind of like my son as well. Same category. Yeah. Yes?
My friend told me about her cousin. He always like eating gum, and she think that's weird for a boy, and that's annoying her.
Well, so she thinks it's weird for a man to show gum.
Yes.
It depends how it happens. Yeah, I mean, if it goes like, I don't think that would be fine. Right. What else? Yeah.
So my friends, this was another episode of Frameworks. Now, in this episode, we talked about two frameworks mixed together. The receptive skills framework plus the text-based presentation framework. And of course, 45 minutes would not be enough for BIC's frameworks. However, now we've seen an example of how this can be done. And also you saw a wonderful example from Straightforward by Macmillan. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.